Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I am just setting up the YouTube chat. Let's see, let me get that off to the side. Um, Saying hello and reminding people to ask questions. Be sure to ask questions early if they are at all urgent, because about 1 in 3, 1 in 4 shows, we don't have time for all questions. So if it's important to you, ask it sooner rather than later. The other thing I want to point out is that Google is changing a lot right now. And uh, I think my talk at SEO spring training this year is getting more and more important. I think it might be one of the most important talks I've ever given. Um, and it's going to be focusing on how to find the opportunities in this new and changing Google. Because while we were all fixated on ranking our pages, and we did such a great job at that, we kind of didn't notice that the good opportunities have become more scarce, and trying to figure out where they went and why isn't it obvious. And so I'm going to be talking about this. I tentatively call this topic SEO Targeting 2.0. And it's already changing what I need to do in my software. I think SEO tools are all built wrong to handle the current state of things. I think that a lot of changes are coming if your goal is to get targeted traffic. There are things that I'm seeing in Google's uh, architecture that make me think that the keywords that most people are targeting for are not necessarily the result pages that most people are seeing for even those keywords. Um, I think there are some serious changes happening with Google right now, and I'm going to be talking about that at SEO spring training. So if you're feeling like you're being blindsided by SEO, especially if you're in ecom, then yeah, come to SEO spring training, and I'm going to share everything I have. Uh, but without any spoilers, Lee, how impactful do you think some of the things I'm noticing are?
Yeah, I think the without getting into, I know that some of the stuff that you're working on, and I've seen a little bit of your data, and it's troubling, especially since it's non-obvious, especially if you're using standard SEO tools. So the we always talk about, and you've been a big proponent of talking about this since the early days, that I've seen you on the internet, about all tools lie. And now there's some systematic problems. It's not that the tool providers are intentionally deceiving. They don't even know. And that's part of the problem is they don't even know that their shit is wrong. So they don't even know to fix it yet. And that's a problem. So, there are the SERPs are definitely changing. And I think Ted's talk is going to highlight the daylights out of it for people. And hopefully, those that are tool providers will take from that information and make their tools accurate.
Ted,
So,
do you think this is a deliberate move by Google to counter SEO and SEO tools, or do you think it's just a byproduct of what they're doing on the SERPs?
Um, it's hard to know the mind of Google, and I don't pretend to know the mind of Google. I trust what I can see and measure. So the behaviors I typically talk about are things I'm witnessing and measuring in Google presently. Um, it's possible that Google is out to get SEOs, but I don't think there's good money in that. So it
Mm,
doesn't make business sense. I think SEOs being disrupted is a pleasant bonus for them at best.
yeah.
At best. What they're probably doing is trying to mitigate costs because certain things are very expensive to put up on the page, and certain things are very cheap. Certain things might have privacy requirements and agreements, certain things might not. And things are changing in a way where the same keyword can have multiple contexts with different search volumes showing different results. And man, um, it come to SEO spring training. I'm going to share everything I have, and I'm going to give you my best ideas on what to do about it. That's all I can say right now. But look out, people. It's happening. All right. With that, um, somebody's asking, do we have the link for SEO spring training? And no, because Terry Samuels doesn't roll like that. You Google it and he ranks number one. So SEO spring training, go get it. Um, And it's smart that he does that. You know why? Because he's getting brand traffic through Google to his website. It's a really good signal. So if you want to learn a lesson while getting your ticket, you're learning one right there. Get brand traffic if you can. All right. So we have two small presentations, and then we'll get to some question and answer stuff. Who would like to go first?
I can go
Charles,
first today.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll
go
go
ahead,
first
man.
today. Yeah, mine's pretty straightforward. Yeah, share my screen. I assume everybody can see my screen. So this is just a little field date I fell into. I really don't have any huge um, aha moments other than just I've seen something that I've seen in the past, and I'm curious if other folks have seen it and if any of you guys have seen it as well. Recently, I should say. So there was an article. It all started with an article in Search Engine Roundtable. I love going to Search Engine Roundtable. I like reading the articles. Um, I typically disagree with most of the things I read there, but I find it humorous. I find it enjoyable, and it always gets me thinking about something else. And that's kind of that's one of the big things about just challenging yourself. Read things from people you don't agree with, whether it's SEO, whether it's politics, whatever. Read things from people you don't agree with because it forces you to make sure you understand what you understand, or at least understand
Mm,
what you think you understand. So this was talking about a Google search snippet, and they were asking if it was a bug or a feature. Someone typed in Wix Q4 2024, and they noticed that the date. Now, normally it gives a date. Or a time, it'll say like January 29th, or it'll say 3 hours ago. This one said in 7 days. And so I was like, huh, that's interesting. Let's see if I'm going to see that as well. So I went in and I did a quick search, and I did this 5 days after the article. So it said in 2 days. I was like, what do you know? So it's Google's giving you like a countdown almost, like, okay, this is going to come up. Now, this normally doesn't happen. Typically, if you were to type in, Trump or something like that, you'd see a whole bunch of news articles, and they would typically show 25 minutes ago, 3 hours ago. If you did most searches, it would show you the date and time for that document date, and get into a whole conversation about where that date comes from, but we won't right now. But the in 2 days, I had never seen this before, and the folks who wrote the article hadn't seen this before. So I did a little more digging, And I said, well, where could this Google be getting this from? So Google could be looking at the date in the title and figuring out from there. I'll tell you what I've learned doing date testing. Google does not typically parse dates out of the title or the content. Google's looking for dates in a structured manner. So for example, if you want your document date, if you want the date on your document understood as this is the date of the article, you need to have like published or updated or something like that before. It's looking for that data. When I looked in the content a little bit more, I found a table. And in the table, it had when and it had a date. I suspect it came from this. The reason I suspect it came from this is let's set the Wayback Machine to like at least 10 years ago, probably more. When schema first started coming out, people first started talking about schema. One of the things that was happening is that if you didn't know how to or didn't want to use schema, Google would still use tables. And it would use tables as structured data. So I did a quick little inspect and I saw that indeed this page was using a table. And thinking, I wonder if this date, if Google's looking at the table and then figuring out the date based on that. Here's my dilemma. I couldn't find any supporting data. I spent hours looking for other things that were doing this, and I couldn't find anything in here. By the way, if you look at the dates in that image, you can see it usually says like 3 days ago, an hour ago, 3 weeks ago, or a date 15 minutes ago. It rarely puts a future date. So I couldn't find any other future dates. I couldn't prove this theory, but I also couldn't disprove this theory.
Well,
I do remember years ago that tables used to act like schema, but
Mhm.
maybe that's changed. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ted.
Charles, I have to completely disagree with you
Okay.
here. Google is just so smart. I think you've missed the obvious thing. They've made advancements in quantum computing and they're now pulling headlines from the future.
That's possible. That is possible. But they don't have to pull it from the future. The headline was already there. They knew that it was going to happen. But like I said, I don't think Google's pulling the date and time. I don't have proof that it was pulling out of the table other than this my memory from years and years ago that you used to be able to use tables as default schema on a page. I can't find any other examples. So if other folks out there have examples of future dates, um, put it in the comments, put it in the chat here. We'll dig into it. Are they, is Google looking at schemas? Google looking at tables? This page, by the way, didn't have any schema on it when I looked at it. So it wasn't any kind of like event schema or something like that where it knew that it was happening in the future. So that's what's going on right now. Nothing, just some field data I stumbled across. I thought that was interesting, so I figured I'd share it with everybody and hopefully spur some thoughts or discussion on the subject.
That's innovative in terms of that particular presentation of it, but tables by definition are a type of structured data. So, if you go into schema itself, you've got the at type, which defines it, but then everything in schema is a field name and a value and a field name and a value. And, that's basically what it is. But a table definition does the same thing. It gives you, the rows and the columns, which ones have the value in that particular place. You've got date over in, you know, position in the table, and just to the right of it, you've got the value of the date that you see in the future. So,
Yeah, and
it
I
functions
thought
as structured data.
I thought there was a special operator for searching dates. If there is, you might be able to search only for documents that are in the future.
Oh, that's a good idea. Let's see. I can't choose anything in the future.
Well, put in any date and then modify it in the URL string.
There you go.
Oh, okay. Let's do...
Learn some string manipulation, Mr. Taylor,
Indeed. Now I gotta find it.
like all the black hats do. You know who
So
you
I will
are.
choose 15 and 15.
Yeah, so the special operators won't let you search for their future data that they clearly have.
It puts the date in here though, interestingly.
Yeah. Uh, That's actually kind of weird. I wonder if you put some nonsense in there, if it'll show nonsense. Is it validated or is it a cross-site scripting exploit? But
Oh, I see.
in Lee is cool.
Hey, let's not go back to that one.
No,
No,
no.
knows it's
All
not
right.
valid.
They covered their validation cases.
Indeed. So, anyways, I don't know if anyone else can find this. I know again going back, I remember that you could use tables as a form of schema way in the past. Maybe it still works, maybe it doesn't, maybe there's something else going on here that I'm not aware of. Kind of wanted to throw it out to the community and you guys, see what you guys thought.
Yeah, it's interesting, things do have future dates. Events happen in the future. So there are news about things that are going to happen in the future. There are timetables on things like Black Friday specials and when they start and when they end. Um, so yeah, there is a need to handle future time. It's just weird that there's no mechanism to search for it. I wonder if you searched for announce in 3 days, like something like that, if it can figure it out.
Yeah, I tried several versions of something like that. I was trying to figure out, okay, well, what
Right.
corporation is going to make an announcement soon? And like I said, I couldn't replicate this. But that was mainly because of my own lack of creativity, probably. Um, 5 Q1 results.
Because yeah, if you could figure this out, you'd technically be making a new category of SEO. You'd be conducting future SEO.
Mhm.
And you do have event schema. So, if Taylor Swift is going to have a concert in San Antonio in 3 weeks, you can have a page about that event. You can put event schema on it. You can put a future date. Now, I've done that in the past with the news sites. There was going to be something, a State of the Union or something like that. But there was never any, in 3 days, in 2 days, in 3 hours. That never showed up in the search results. It was always dates and times didn't show up until the event took place.
Yeah, yeah, wonder. Like the language is interesting to announce, so implying it hasn't been announced yet.
You could try something else, Charles. You try like put in concert and then 3/7/25, is the date. Yeah, the put it in as a date. Yeah.
But there's a big difference between announcing something and saying you're going to announce it on a given date.
Yeah. Yeah, see, those would probably have event schema, which is how they're popping in.
Let's try picking something in the future. All right, so Deftones, Wells Fargo Center.
There it is. Oh, that's no, that's in the meta description. My bad.
Yeah. But when we look at this, I'm not going to find a table on this page, I suspect.
No.
So,
But fortunately, you know how to create a fake future event and a table. So I suspect a test is coming.
See if the Vatican has said when they're going to announce their new pope they have to pick. If anybody knows the future.
Can't believe we're trying to query Google for the future. This is happening, people.
but even if they are going to announce it, if they don't have it,
You know,
if they don't have a table, we wouldn't. See, that's the weird thing I ran into. I had to find both somebody that has a table and someone that's about to do an announcement to be able to try to prove, okay, here's a table that doesn't have in 3 days and 5 days. And
yeah.
I think there must be some way that the table is tied to eat, right? If only semantically. So
I got nothing.
yeah, I had a lot of trouble trying to prove or disprove this. Hence, I figured, this is a good one to bring to the group.
Copy the table. See if you can make a test page that triggers it.
Yeah, that's all I could come up with as well. It's like, okay, how do I make a page that then says an event's going to happen? I didn't do it yet. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, future SEO might be cool, if it can be leveraged for CTR in some way.
For sure.
So, yeah, if you got your countdown timer pressure happening via your future SEO, that could be kind of cool. All right, so Lee, what have you got for us today?
Yeah, I got a little, I get a little share. I'm going to just preface this. This is going to be quick. My loving wife refers to me as the dream killer. Because a lot of times people will bring out, a data or analysis or an idea, and then I will take a look at that data and use that data to shred the idea. So I see a lot of times in studies and other things that are being done, not just in SEO, in other fields as well, where the research or the study or the conclusion is not necessarily supported by the data and the way that they did it. So yeah, I've shown this to people. People seem to have they learn something from it. So I'm hoping that the group can learn something from this as well. This is not intended to be mean-spirited towards the person who did this particular analysis. So, and I'll also preface it by saying they may in fact be correct, but not based on the data that they pulled. So let me just share screen. I'm going to walk you guys through a very nice, well-intentioned thing. These folks over here, this person who's a senior data scientist, well qualified, has an undergraduate from the University of Virginia, graduate degree, master's degree from New York University, used a lot of nice tools on this particular analysis. And they were looking at the impact of AI overviews on web traffic. So they're looking for, sort of a causal relationship here. And what they did was, at its heart, very simple. They broke some SERPs down into those that did not have any sort of AI overview on the one side. And on the other side, they said, all right, those that have an AI overview, which pages were included or excluded. And so they're limiting themselves to the top 10. So they're saying, here's the SERP, here's the top 10 results, here's an AI overview.
Problems. I'm already having problems with this because I know you can sit there and click on reload and get the same keyword to pop the AI overview one search and not the next. There's volatility in this feature being present.
Well, there's also volatility in the SERP themselves down below that, sir. But let's just assume that doesn't
But
happen.
if you're segmenting groups, you're segmenting it based on a random behavior.
That's one problem, yes. But you know what? We're going to ignore that one because there's other
Okay.
problems I want to talk about.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, right there, where you're looking at something off the bat and you know that, okay, did they control for this? Probably not, because most people are unaware of those sort of behaviors. The way they actually pulled it was, using an external sort of more or less scraper to pull it for these particular keywords, but that's okay. So you've got these included and excluded. So in the top 10, when the AIO pops up, when the overview pops up, which of the URLs in the top 10 was included and referenced by that overview and which ones were not? Okay, so they've got these buckets and we've got questions about these buckets. And they said, all right. And then they grabbed web clicks as a proxy for web traffic, total clicks as a proxy for web traffic. That's fine. So then they have these findings. First thing that I want to look at here is this. We all know if you studied statistics, everybody looks for that p-value less than or equal to 0.5, but they went and defined something as weak with a p-value less than 0.15, which data scientists never fucking do. There is never a close but no cigar category, because that's almost like admitting that you're kind of leaning towards trying to prove your hypothesis. So
Yeah.
let's get something close. That's a no-no.
I did this in Cora knowing it was a no-no, and it was bullshit when I did it too.
Yeah. Yeah. But you also highlighted it and said, this is,
Yeah, I called it interesting.
yeah. So now,
I didn't call it weak, but it's still wrong.
yeah, here's one of the first things that you see. So I'm going to show you this. The first thing they did is they looked at pages that did not have an overview versus pages that did have an overview and where the URLs were included. I'm like, this is the definition of an apples and orange comparison. You've got some keywords where they'll show an AI overview, some where they won't. Let's compare them and see if there's differences in traffic. Maybe.
But it can be the same keyword.
But it also can be the same keyword, which is another fucking problem with this. So you've got, an apples and oranges comparison, another apples and oranges comparison. But then, if you get into it and say, all right, so it pops up. Now we're looking at included versus excluded. At least now, we've got one fixed thing that we know we can hold on to here. And they're looking at that and saying, there's some differences in the way they broke it down. Okay, I can live with that. Now, they start with their causal inference stuff, which most people don't do. They use some fancy shit. And when they're doing this, I'm going to skip, and I'm just going to show you something in their data set. This is important. They define things as non-AIO, inclusion or exclusion. Look at the percent of pages, informational pages. For the no AIO, it's 60% informational, 17% transactional. That's based on their classifier. For these other two, inclusion, exclusion, it's 96.3, 91, and 6. These are completely different populations in their own data. Completely different populations that they're trying to, draw some comparisons of. This is the apples and oranges. This is with their own shit. Drives me up a wall when somebody who should know better does stupid shit like this. Then they'll go down and they'll break it out even further. They'll break it out into, where you were ranked, 1 to 10, in the top 2 versus 3 to 10. They did a whole lot of breakouts. And then they jumped in and said the impact of AI overviews on web traffic depends on the attributes. Generally speaking, being excluded from an AIO has measurable and significant harms for a web page because the traffic was different. Now, my objection to this, my primary objection to this, is that it's entirely possible the criteria for including a site in the overview is that it's an authority site. which has more fucking traffic to start with, which means the inclusion was not the cause of the traffic. The traffic was the cause of the inclusion. Nowhere addressed in this particular paper, nowhere acknowledged in this particular paper. People don't understand self-selection. And then now that we have this poorly executed study, now others are parroting this. They're referencing this study. And people are saying, hey, pages can experience traffic spikes of up to 3.6 times their normal clicks by appearing in an AIO. Where the hell did that number come from? Let's go look at the study and see. We go back up to these tables, the apples and oranges comparison. We'll notice right here in the worst case apples and oranges comparison, you have this right here, which basically says for transactional keywords, which we know the no AI web pages have many, many more transactional pages within that data set.
All right, let's do a transactional search on Google. Let's do where to buy rechargeable batteries.
Where to buy. That's your term, sir?
Yep.
All right. I will be your shill.
All right, so no AIO.
No AIO.
All right, you have any ideas on how we can get an AIO on transactional? Why to buy rechargeable batteries?
Let's go online.
Yeah. You might be able to redo that one and get a second chance. Just, yeah, refresh.
Best rechargeable batteries, where to buy the best ones.
Ooh.
It's comparative is big on AIO.
Yeah, not seeing it.
So obviously their study was perfect.
Yes.
All right, let's try buying something enterprise. Where to buy a barn?
Probably right where it sits, but okay. I'm with Terry on this one. Look, I'm an Oklahoma boy. You buy it where it sits. These, you don't put these on a trailer and move them. Where to buy a barn? I'm going to use Terry's, the best barn. I don't see him. Maybe it just doesn't like opera. That could very well be. So, you know.
So what is that group that got quoted then at 3.6 times the clicks?
Okay. All right, Charles. Charles has got a thing here. Let me go grab Charles search.
The second one is an autocomplete. So if you start typing in like timber frame,
Let's just. All right, there's an AI overview.
Oh, okay. There we go. That looks transactional.
Right.
Damn,
So
that was hard though.
hard to replicate, but you can see this, you know, they're looking at which, which ones were included and which ones weren't.
And so 3.6 times the traffic being that little link icon?
No, they're saying that this particular URL or these particular URLs have 3.6 times the traffic of the ones that, you know, aren't included in this overview across the pool that they provided. But what I'm saying is that, you know, the ones that get included in here are more likely to be authority sites, which inherently are going to have more traffic to those URLs. So one thing they could have done in their study is taken these URLs, gone back, you know, because they pulled some of this data from Search Console, I believe. They could have gone back 6 months ago before the AI overviews started to be as rampant and see if there was a difference in traffic between the AI overview keywords and non-AIO keywords, or inclusion and exclusion URLs in general. They could have compared that to see if there's been a jump based on inclusion in the AIO. In other words, now do we have more clicks because we're popping in here, or did we always have more clicks? Or possibly now that we're popping in here, we're getting fewer clicks than we used to before this AIO appeared. So again, we don't know. They might be correct about this AI overview leading to, improvements in clicks and traffic.
Well, being above the fold at the top, I mean, it would be a pretty big failure if it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. But they even tried to control for it looking at, like when I opened this up, but if you close this back up and said, let me just refresh this. So here, like here above the fold is also Reddit, so this would have already been above the fold. And so they broke it out, positions 1 and 2 versus positions 3 through 10. And, they tried to control for a lot of different things, but they didn't control for the initial selection bias in their categorization. That's the problem.
Yep.
So if I copy everything in the overview and put it on my test page, let's see.
Well, I don't know that the organic algorithm is coordinating with the AI feature. So, I have some doubts about that plan because we know from things like featured snippet, if you treat a featured snippet like it's position 0, you've corrupted your analysis because the featured snippet can be picked from as low as page 4. It is not necessarily number one performing content as tuned. And so, because of that, you want to be careful on saying this is the ideal content standard based on our content analysis, because the AI overview might not be that either. It might have the featured snippet problem.
Yeah, because here's the thing: when you're looking at this, if the inclusion of these things, like Reddit was not among the ones chosen, and yet it ranks organically number 1. Come down here, the Green Building Advisor, Logan Gate Timber Homes, Yankee Barn Homes, blah, blah, blah. Some of these are being selected for this information, some are not. And, all 10 of these spots are qualified because they're on page 1 for this particular keyword search. So there is some criteria going into the selection, who gets included, who gets excluded, that's in here. And more than likely, it is some sort of authority or trust signal, which inherently biases the analysis. Plus, you got the volatility of the AI overview. Plus, you got the volatility of the rank order of the stuff down below it as well, which it doesn't address. But I was just going to say, let's just leave those as a given. Still doesn't answer the question. So that's me looking at data. I hope, when people go and they study these studies, they don't just go, oh, there's a study and a data scientist did it and blah, 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 because, they make silly mistakes in data selection.
Yeah, I would have stopped reading that study at the point where they segmented based on a random behavior.
Oh, well, listen, I got mad at that point and I kept going, and then I kept rereading it. And then I'm like, oh, we got to talk about this. Because, and then you start to see that this study is being quoted in other articles that are also they're piling conclusions on these conclusions. And I'm like, guys, when you have a house of cards and you're building, the 23rd story on this house of cards, you're not on a good foundation, people.
Well, it's history repeating itself. It's the same thing as all the original white hat SEO advice being echoed in the blogosphere, and then it's been repeated so many times it must be the truth.
Yeah.
You know,
Because the conclusion is if you pop into that AIO thing, you can quadruple your traffic. And I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah, I have doubts. If authority and trust matter, then Google would be better off showing the brands that lend that authority and trust in those citation links. You should know that this one, came from that trust area, and those little citation links do nothing to convey that that information came from a trustworthy source. Now, they have the link, you can investigate and find out, but you have to go through a manual effort to actually do that. They're not clearly communicating it. They're hiding the source unless you want to investigate how many people want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's
And the way I look at this study is stuff that I look at studies everywhere. I look at medical studies this way, social studies this way, all kinds of studies where you're looking at it and saying, no, that data or that data collection or that analysis technique does not lend itself to that conclusion right there. And I see these holes all the time and stuff like this, where I don't have to be an expert in that particular field. I can be an expert in interpretation of data, and it still holds. So anyway, possible bullshit alert, but we can't confirm that it's bullshit. But the study is flawed as
yeah, I had doubts at the top.
cool.
All right, let's see. Uh, Personalization is gonna be kind of nuts. Yep. Do you guys have a link for the SEO spring training? I mentioned that at the beginning. Just Google it. That's what Terry Samuels would like you to do because it benefits his website with brand search. He ranks #1, so it's also a testimony to the kind of SEO that the conference is trying to support. Um, so, yeah, give it a search, SEO Spring Training. Am I correct in saying that one, these links are not going to help my count of referring domains, and two, 302 redirects are not going to pass link equity? I think on that second part, that's probably not true. I think all redirects just count as a layer of linking. There's some threats that the temporary ones may eventually be orphaned in the Google data, but if they still exist, then they'll be rediscovered in the Google data. So Google still has to cope with them. They can't just ignore, half the redirects. So, uh, I mean, like it or not, they need to be dealt with. So odds are they probably still just count as a layer of linking, and that's how they test it out in the past. But I don't know of anyone who's done a formal SEO test recently on that.
I don't have hard data on this, Ted, but I have seen this. When you use a 302, it doesn't seem to be about passing, link equity or juice or anything like that. It seems to be about how Google will treat the recipient or the destination. Will it put it into the discovery queue? And I think what happens is Google doesn't put the destination to the discovery queue initially. But I think they eventually, if you leave a 302 up long enough, they will eventually place that destination URL in the discovery queue. So that's just, again, that's just kind of field data I've seen. Nothing, no tests behind it.
Yeah, yeah. And that kind of makes sense. What they're probably trying to do is to prevent an accident with canonicalization. Um, but how important of a problem is that? It's probably not very common, not very significant. Um, let's see. JP says 302 and 307 don't pass. Could be. test it out. Let's see. I suppose that all of the links going through Global Newswire means I'm getting thousands of links from there and next to zero from other domains. I don't know. You know, again, I haven't seen the research on this lately. So, do you think that EEAT is a real thing? Well, all right. So expertise and authority and trust. I do believe there are concepts of those. They are very poorly defined in public, and they are going to probably be minuscule in scope on Google's end because they have to be so narrowly defined because they're kind of abstract concepts like, trust. Who I trust and who you trust, for something could be different for different rationales. So, you know, uh, some people trust Trump, some people don't trust Trump. What are you going to do? What's his trust score? Where are you going to put it? I mean, it's subjective. Expertise is subjective too. You know, there are plenty of white hat SEOs that I would never hire. And they think poorly of my SEO. Expertise. Who has it? Who doesn't? All right. And so authority is flawed anyway, because that just means backlinks. That's it. Backlinks. So is it a real thing? Yes. Is it full of quirky edge cases and mishaps? Absolutely. It's a dumpster fire. But they've coded that dumpster fire in there, and in some places it may matter. It may matter that if you're talking about medical treatments, that you have some sort of medical credentials on the page associated with the author or the editor or the reviewed by. There could be things like that in play, and that would fall under EAT. But here's the other thing. EAT is probably a real thing. It's probably quirky as hell and very specific to very specific niches and very specific factors. For most people, it probably isn't going to be the determining factor as to whether or not you get page one or not. I think for most keywords, probably 90% or more of keywords, you can probably get to page one without doing any EAT consideration. And as proof of that, we've got Clint and Terry's Nothing But Schema pages. We have 6 or 7 Rhinoplasty Plano pages, and they're all ranking well and they're all doing great. None of that stuff should work if EAT is required everywhere. And all that stuff works today. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think people misunderstand EAT. When Google takes a look and they have their human quality raters look at web pages and evaluate them and rank them. They give them these, the EAT, the guidelines, and the talk about, do you trust this? Does it convey the right authority? Does it blah 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 blah? So they've got these humans evaluating these pages and saying, this is the way if the entire internet was ranked by us, this is kind of the way we would rank it. And then the engineers go, okay, what signals can we use to make our SERPs closer to the way the humans do? Because we can't measure some of that stuff. We can't measure expertise. Is Ted an expert? SEO? Arguably, yes. Fly fishing? Don't know. Don't know if that's one of the things that, Ted may have been doing that for the last 50 years, and he may be, a qualified backcountry guide and we wouldn't know about it. So, how can Google know whether Ted's a fly fishing expert or not, when he writes his fly fishing blog? Things like, is Charles trustworthy? Well, I don't know. I don't know Charles that well. Can't tell whether to trust him, but Ted says Charles is a good guy. You can trust him.
Well, technically, I've never seen his driver's license. It could be an alias.
Oh, well, you know what? I was just about to give Charles a good trust score, but now I'm wondering. But, Ted says Charles is a good guy. I trust Ted. Therefore, that transfers. That's kind of the way it works in code, is we're looking for proxy signals that get us closer to expertise, closer with authority, closer with trust, without actually measuring those things specifically.
Ted actually touched on exactly the thing that some SEOs will do. Maybe Charles Taylor doesn't really exist. Maybe I'm just a persona, but I've written, my persona's written articles. My persona has a driver's license. My persona has this. My persona has that. So therefore, as far as Ted's concerned, Charles Taylor exists. And he's a great guy, and you should trust him as well. But
Me? No way.
That's back to your point. Like there are signals that you can use. Yeah, what is trust? What is expertise? What is authority? Those could be considered subjective, but there are ways you could look and see, is Ted authoritative? Well, Ted has developed an SEO software. His software has been selling for, it's a premium price software, and it's been selling for a decade and a half, if not longer. He might be authoritative, but I haven't seen him do any TED Talks, no pun intended. I haven't seen him speak at SMX. I haven't seen him speak at MozCon. Maybe he's not that authoritative after all. Why is SMX and MozCon considered authoritative? Because everybody, and I'm talking as an algorithm, everybody that I know who's in SEO links to those things. So therefore, they must be authoritative. Like these are the kind of factors the search engines look at to determine these qualitative scores. Expertise. These qualitative scores, or whatever you want to call them. And the more you understand that, the more you can better optimize your site.
Yeah, and in some things like the YMYL, there are clear filters they acknowledge. There's seed sets, like what are the damn things? It's like some of the medical sites that kind of, the health lines and the PubMeds and all those sort of things are going to appear up at the top. And, anything that gets a link from those has a good chance of appearing in those sort of searches. But, Lee's Health Emporium blog, probably not going to get, the highest trust scores in that particular thing, because, I'm an independent and I'm not connected to all of the, the known authority sites in that niche, or the chosen authority sites in that particular niche. So is it a real thing? It's an ideal that they are shooting to try to make the SERPs look like, but exactly how they do that, I could not say with any degree of confidence.
All right, let's see. Do you think people asking questions in Q&A in a GBP listing helps rankings? Running a test now. Quite possibly. If you have engagement on your profile, I think that can probably only help. But the question becomes, what features are in and out of play conditionally. And if you go to map search and you run different searches, like best tacos Seattle or cheap tacos Seattle, you will see that the features that are coming in and out of play in terms of default sorts and filters are changing dynamically. And so there's a number of things within that ecosystem that behave that way. And those behaviors will actually change from keyword to keyword and location to location. For example, best gas station Seattle will not sort by an average rating because Google knows it takes an hour to get across Seattle. There's no point to apply that. But if you do best gas station Edmonds, Washington, then boom, that filter's in play. And so if you're one of those people that's just saying it's all reviews, well, that advice is going to be not so good for gas stations in Seattle and probably really good for gas stations in Edmonds. And if you're not getting in and looking at that, then you probably don't know what's in and out of play for your client. So yeah, and the question becomes, what does that engagement do? Like, is it just bumping the score? Do those Q&As get quoted in the results? There's all kinds of little details on how those things might be leveraged, and you'd really have to test it thoroughly to discover, if they do in fact have an impact. What do you think, Lee? This is a testing question.
Yeah, I mean it's a great, and there's multiple mechanisms at play here that many of which we know have an impact on local rankings. For example, the person asking the question, if they are local to the area, if you're engaging and you're saying, hey, do you offer emergency plumbing services, and it's a Seattle plumber and you're in Seattle, that's different than me asking that here from Oklahoma City. So it's where's the user located who's engaging with your GBP. The question itself is content. So if I ask, do you offer emergency plumbing services? Emergency plumbing service is a great keyword to get in a question. Also a great thing to get in an answer. It's also a great thing to get in a review. Somebody says, man, they came out here because we had an emergency plumbing situation and Ted's plumbers got out here and they fixed shit and it was freaking awesome and we love those guys and so forth. They're the best plumber in Seattle. Can't recommend them enough. Well, that's a lot of keywords and stuff like that in that review, and that's content that gets tied to your brand.
But in terms of expertise and trust, what if the next review said that Ted doesn't know how to fix a leaky faucet?
Well, Charles told you he was going to put that up. That's all I'm going to say, man.
Hey, man, maybe it's not a case of bad plumber. Maybe you just bought a crappy faucet.
But I'm not even sure that that's a bad thing because I'm vegan, so I search for vegan food when we travel around. And
yeah.
one of the things that pops up when you search for vegan food in this particular city is you'll get a snippet, and the snippet will sit there and it'll highlight this has no vegan options, and it'll highlight that as an example of a good restaurant for me to go to because it has vegan options, bolded in that particular review. It says, look, this is a great place. It has vegan options, but it's not reading the context of it. This has no vegan options. So we see that all the time with those sort of things. So I'm not sure Ted doesn't know how to fix a leaky faucet doesn't just boost you for leaky faucet repair.
Yeah,
you could even I was going to say, you could even look at it from the standpoint of Ted fixed my problem immediately, but he was expensive and rude. Was that a good review or a bad review? Like, I don't know. Like, okay, he fixed my problem, but he was expensive and rude. What's more important to me yeah, the I guess the sentiment, I don't know what Google does with that.
Well, people just don't realize the value of quality sarcasm.
Indeed.
That's in your GBP is valuable. And, I'm inclined to agree. So we've been measuring the number of profile factors used. And more often than not, the people that use more of the features in a business profile tend to rank better. They tend to qualify to be in more types of searches, which probably means they tend to be seen in more searches. They can play the SEO game in more searches. They probably get more engagement overall. So even if the factor that Google coded was something like click-through rate engagement, if having a full profile leads to you appearing in more in searches and being capable of getting more click-through engagement, having a full profile could be a best practice. It could be an emergent factor that leads to the factor that Google's actually using. And so that's why, as SEOs, we don't care what Google coded. We care about what best practices yield results, whether they are coded factors or emergent best practice factors that downstream hit those coded things. Um, and so, yeah, JP's right. The data is in on this. Using more of your profile, getting it fully configured, properly configured, tends to lead to better results.
Mhm.
Let's see. Ted nailed it. Currently working with painters. People make them use cheap paint and then blame them for the result. Well, yeah, that's not an SEO problem though.
Well, I'll give you a tip, and this came from, my wife who worked in construction for 30 years as a, home builder, remodeler, etc. And when a client wanted to do something stupid like that, she would get them to sign a document that said, "Hey, you're using this cheap paint. You've been advised that, this and this and this are, possible bad outcomes that you have as a result of that." Because sometimes people, when they want a cheap remodel or a cheap this or a cheap that, when it doesn't work out, or, it breaks or whatever it happens to be, they come back and they sue. It's the contractor's fault. Well, if you have a piece of paper that says, "Hey, we advised you that this was going to happen, you signed here, you knew," that kills it. So that's one of those things that just, you can help your painters out. People are forcing them to use a grade of paint that they don't think is the right one. Get them to sign a document, and that ends that.
All right. And let's see. Let me switch to live chat in case I missed anything. Nope, just not a lot of questions today. All right, everyone. We will see you next time. Thanks for hanging out. And don't forget SEO spring training. I think quite possibly my most important talk ever is going to be at that SEO spring training. Hopefully it doesn't fall on deaf ears, but I am working diligently between now and then to figure out where Google is going with all this stuff and how the technology has to evolve. And right now, headless Chrome is looking like an absolute nightmare. So
I'll get dropped.
yeah, stay tuned, and hope we'll see you next week. And I hope to sit down with you at the bar at SEO Spring Training. I'll buy a round of drinks if you come to the show. All right, take care.
Uniform.